Uh, yes, we are live,
Yeah.
and we're ready for the first ever official live stream with Fabric February.
Nice.
Woohoo!
Nice.
We
Gonna be
did
good.
a little bit and had a tiny live stream just to introduce the team. But this is the actual live stream, everybody. So this is the real deal. This is the thing. This is happening. Yeah, right now. Yes, we're making history, right? Okay, so I have some amazing people with me here today from Tabular Editor, and I'm going to give them all the room and the big stage in just a bit. But before we start, I'm going to have a really short introduction of myself and also Fabric February, because I just want to remind everyone what we're doing. Yes. So, well, hello, my name is Martha, and I'm one of the FabFem organizers of Fabric February. And I will host this live stream today with Tabular Editor, so I'm really excited about that. And of course, I just have to give you all a little bit of introduction about Fabric February too. So, what is Fabric February? If you haven't heard it by now, it's this brand new conference that is dedicated to everything Microsoft Fabric. So that's all the things we're going to talk about. It's going to be in real life in Oslo, February 8th. In 2024. So we're really excited about that. And we also discussed that this is probably the first ever Fabric specific themed conference, at least in real life. So we'll see if that still stands when we are in February, but that's how it looks right now, at least. So that's pretty exciting. Yes. So today you are watching the live stream with Tabular Editor, and they're going to show us all the things and how we can use Tabular Editor inside of Fabric. Pretty excited to see that. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot, so that will be great. And then I want to just remind you that if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you're ready for all the live streams that we're going to have until February. You're going to learn a lot of things, so this is a place to be for sure. And also, the really exciting news, our schedule is live. Yay! So this Monday, we'll release the schedule. And if you haven't taken a look at it already, do that. It's some amazing speakers. We have Microsoft coming in, joining us, talking about their products and their features. And it's going to be a really good day. So have a look. If you haven't, you can go into fabricfebruary.com and look at the schedule and dig into all the sessions and see if you can find your favorite already. That's not going to be easy, I'm sure. And then also, the tickets are also available if you want to purchase them. Also go into fabricfebruary.com and you can find them there. And they're going pretty fast, which is awesome, but we do have a limit on our venue, which is the movie theater, by the way. So it's going to integrate perfectly with the sub-theme of the snacks. Yeah, it's going to be a good day for sure. All right. So, Martin, Daniel, are you ready?
Yes.
Certainly are.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Marta. We are really looking forward to the Fabric February event, and we'll be present as well. Since we are proud sponsors of this event, so naturally we will be there in person. So you can come and say hi to us and ask us any questions you may have about Tabular Editor for sure.
Yes.
So yeah, really looking forward to that. All right. Should we get started?
Yes. Do you want to present? I see I'll add your presentation to stage. And I also see that we have some people saying hi. So that's really nice. Hello.
Hey, Christian.
Hello,
hey, Bernard.
Hi. And also people can just ask questions in the chat, right? If they have any questions or have a comment or anything. And we'll have some good discussions.
Very good. All right, so Morten and I prepared a presentation for you guys today called The Proliferation of Semantic Models in Fabric. And it is loosely based on an article that we wrote in collaboration with Kurt Buhler, a couple of months ago, which is available on our blog.tabulator.com. But we have also prepared a demo that Morten will show you in a little bit. But yeah, that will be the topic for this session, is what our thoughts about the semantic model within the context of Fabric and how Tabular Editor can help. Right. So just a very short slide about our company as sponsors of FabFeb February. So Tabular Editor, the company, was founded in 2021, 2.5 years ago. And the main purpose of this company is, as you probably already guessed, to develop and sell Tabular Editor 3, our commercial product. We have customers in more than 100 countries, so more or less all over the globe. And we are also collaborating closely with the SQL BI team, Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari, and a few others, as part of a joint venture called Tabular Tools, which you may also have heard about. So yeah, that's our company, and today it's Morten and myself who will be presenting. So Morten, maybe
and
say a few
I'll
words.
start out saying my name is Morten, I'm product manager at Tabular Editor. I do a lot of working with feature planning, support, the documentation, all that kind of stuff. I originate from Denmark, but I based in Hamburg, Germany.
Yes, and I'm Daniel. I'm the inventor of Tabular Editor, both 2 and 3. Tabular Editor 2 is the open source version, and 3 is our commercial version. And I also work as the CTO of this company with all of the technical responsibility. I live in Denmark, but in fact, most of our team is sort of spread out. It's not like we have a Tabular Editor office, dedicated office anywhere. The entire team is kind of spread out across Denmark, and we have Morten in Hamburg as well. And yeah, so we spend a lot of time in front of our screens talking to each other through video conferencing, just like this. So yeah. All right, so what exactly is Tabular Editor 3? Well, we like to say that it's evolution of the open source tool. So Tabular Editor 2, as I already said, is open source and completely free and available for everyone. For those who would like a more premium experience, we have this commercial offering, which also comes with some liability and so on, which makes it easier for larger companies to pick up, or at least for some companies, compared to an open source offering. So now we have these two tools. Tabular Editor 2 is not going anywhere. It's very important for me to emphasize that. It will always remain free and open source, and we will keep it up to date and provide bug fixes along the way. So essentially, Tabular Editor is a Windows desktop application, and we like to say that it brings your semantic modeling to warp speed. So we kind of have this space theme going on. So if you see some little aliens on some of these slides, or hear us say other like space-related things like warp speed and so on, that's actually why, because we're huge space geeks, all of us. So that's why. So yeah, and so one of the reasons why we decided to go with a commercial model is, first of all, because there's a lot of like really premium features in Tabular Editor 3 that have taken a lot of years to develop. But this new model also allows us to have a dedicated team of developers and support technicians, which makes it much more attractive, we think, for larger companies. So if you're interested in some of the history behind this, I wrote a blog post on LinkedIn a couple of months ago, since Tabular Editor 2 actually started as sort of like a hobby project, which I built in my spare time. But of course, that's not really sustainable. So that's why we basically decided to turn this into a full-blown commercial thing, and it is now my and Morten's and others' full-time job. All right.
Indeed, and so this was Tabular Editor 3, but what has that got to do with Fabric? Well, that's what we want to talk about next. In our view, Fabric is going to be relying so much more on semantic models than Power BI did, and there are a couple of reasons for that, which we'll just quickly go through with some examples. We believe that semantic models will have a larger impact in organizations, and it will definitely become a lot more prevalent. And for that, if there are more semantic models around, if they have higher impact and more users are using them, well, managing and supporting them becomes an even more important aspect for BI departments or general organizations using Fabric for their data management. To the first point, semantic models, so that we know from Power BI, formerly known as dataset, have a lot of different places that can be connected to them now with Fabric. So there are new things such as notebooks, Dataflow Gen 2, Data Activator, Microsoft Copilot that can now start connecting to them. And that means that there is going to be a lot more impact of those semantic models. So organizations need to develop and support both self-service and enterprise data models. And to handle all these kind of different connections that is possible to have to these semantic models, you're going to need to require scalable tools and processes that can really, help you along the way. We also think that semantic models are going to be more prevalent. That's going to be a lot more of them in Fabric than there perhaps was in Power BI. In Power BI, we had a lot of self-service users, but we're going to start seeing auto-generated default models from lake houses and data warehouses. We're going to see how easy it is to use direct lake models to create for any kind of user. The data engineer, the data scientist might even start creating them. And finally, with web authoring of models, it's just going to be a lot easier. So all the people on Mac can now start actually creating some great semantic models in Power BI as well. So for the third point, there's going to be a lot more complexity in Fabric with regard to semantic modeling. So we know we have import mode, we have direct query, we have hybrid models, so different kind of composite models, and now we're also adding another direct lake storage mode. So it's going to be a lot of different things going on. We're going to see AI-driven DAX in self-service scenarios. So with Microsoft Copilot and these things that we've been teased on Ignite, well, they're going to require support, optimization to really get the most out of these kind of semantic models. And this is, in our view, what Tabular Editor can help you do. So you can connect and analyze to your enterprise BI models. You can connect and analyze and optimize your departmental models. You can do that to your self-service models, and you can even use it together with Power BI Desktop as an external tool. So there are really a lot of different angles where Tabular Editor can help you manage this multitude of semantic models in the future.
Yeah, and some of the features that Tabular Editor offers, which help you become more productive, are some of the ones that we list here. So, for example, and I would say that this is probably the most important thing, is that with Tabular Editor you can work asynchronously. You can work offline. Meaning that anytime you make a change to your model, you don't have to wait for the little working on it spinner to finish its thing. Even if you're working on a huge model with a lot of complexity, many tables and measures and so on, all of the changes you make in Tabular Editor are lightning fast. So it's only when you hit the save button that we go back and update the semantic model that you're connected to. And that in general just makes for a much more productive experience. Moreover, we also have a lot of batch functionalities, so you can make multiple changes like batch renames. You can script objects using DAX scripts, and in general, we believe we provide a better experience for making a lot of changes to the model. Oh, could you go back, please, Morten? I wasn't completely finished. Thank you. Moreover, we have a lot of functionality for working with tables and columns. Now, specifically for Direct Lake, you will actually notice that one thing that's not possible currently in the web modeling experience is renaming tables in a Direct Lake model. But that's not a problem if you're using Tabular Editor, then that's perfectly fine. But we also have options, for example, for if you want to refresh a table. So now I'm talking about import models. you can kick off a table refresh while you're working, and then the refresh happens in the background so that you're not blocked and can keep working while the refresh is running. We also have a super cool DAX code editor in Tabular Editor 3, which provides a lot of productivity enhancing features like autocomplete, IntelliSense, and so on, and offline syntax checking and highlighting. And finally, we have a C# scripting functionality, which helps you become even more productive, since it lets you automate certain tasks. And you can even, with Tabular Editor 3, you can even record macros. So there's like this little record button, and which will then generate the C# script for you as you make changes to your model. So it's easier than ever to become super productive when working with semantic models. Next slide. In addition to productivity features, we have a lot of features that help you build better quality models. So already mentioned how we have the offline syntax and semantic checking, which lets you detect errors before they creep into your deployed models. But we also have something called a best practice analyzer, which is completely configurable and which you can set up to scan for certain naming conventions, or just in general best practice and principles for creating semantic models. We have in Tabular Editor 3, we have Vertipack Analyzer included as well, which is also helpful when you're looking into optimizing your model and you're worried about stuff like table and column cardinalities. With Vertipack Analyzer, you'll have all that at the tip of your fingers. But we also have like various client features that let you actually test and validate the code. So we have pivot grids, which is very similar actually to the newly announced Explore feature of the Power BI service. So it's basically just one big pivot table where you can drag in some measures and validate them and sort them and filter and so on, at the way you're used to doing it from Excel. And last but certainly not least, we have the DAX debugger, which actually requires a session on its own, because it's a pretty involved tool. But basically, the idea is that it lets you dive into any DAX expression in your model across your measures and go line by line, function call by function call, to see the values of intermediate variables and investigate what's the current evaluation context, and all of these concepts that apply to DAX. So if you're sometimes struggling to get your DAX code to produce the correct result, then the debugger is a super helpful tool to find out what's going on. Lastly, the tool lets you scale up in enterprise environments. Thanks to the scripting interface that I mentioned earlier, it's possible to set up some sort of automated testing. We have a command line tool shipped, which is included in Tabular Editor 2, the open source version, which lets you set up these kinds of automated processes, for example, for testing DAX logic, but also for performing deployments against the XML endpoint. And together with a different storage format, a different metadata storage format for the actual model metadata, which is much more suited for version control integration. We believe that this basically improves collaboration. So when you have a team of developers that need to work in parallel on the same semantic model. So yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. So most of the stuff I mentioned here is available both in Tabular Editor 2 and Tabular Editor 3. But of course, there are some of the more premium things like the DAX debugger, which is only available in Tabular Editor 3.
Indeed. And I think we've had a good talk about it, but so maybe we should take a look at what this actually means. So I'm gonna take a demo of a data lake house, or of a Direct Lake table. Direct Lake model, and try to edit that with Tabular Editor 3. Just one thing to be aware of when with this is that if you have set up a semantic model in Fabric, and you start editing through the XML endpoint with, for example, Tabular Editor or any other tool that can use the XML endpoint, this will lock out web authoring. So it's kind of like once you start it, you're a bit you're signed up to that pathway of changing your semantic model in the future.
Yeah, and just a quick note here, because absolutely right, Microsoft will prevent web authoring of any models that have been modified through the XML endpoint. They will also prevent downloading the model as a PBIX file. But that's no news to people who have been using the XML endpoint for a while. However, there is actually a workaround thanks to the new PBI developer mode, so the PBIP project format. So if by mistake you edited a model through the XML endpoint and you then need to go back to Power BI Desktop with that model in a way that you can still open it in desktop and still publish it through Power BI Desktop, etc., then there is actually a workaround for that. So I don't want to go into details here. I don't want to steal too much time from the demo, but just know that it can be done, and you can just Google it, I guess, and yeah, it's already been described a couple of times how to do it.
Yeah, amongst others on our docs site, actually docs.tabulareditor.com, you can find a very short article on that topic exactly. Oops. All right. So let's get started with the demo. I have here a Fabric workspace where a very nice data engineer has started building out a data model from our space parts data set. So this is what Daniel talked about earlier, that we have this space theme around. And he or she has, this data engineer has started and think, well, I put in some tables, I put in some relationships, we're good to go. Probably not when you come from a Power BI world. You need to do some a lot of things. We can, for example, easily see that there are no explicit measures in this model. So these are some of the things that we can go in, and what we're going to do now is hop over into Tabular Editor 3 and see how we can become quite productive by using that. So the first step is to connect to the model. So I'm up in the right corner, load the semantic model from my Power BI workspace using the XML endpoint. Open that up and find my Lakehouse dataset. And I get the same image as I do above. A good place to start with when you have a model that somebody else built, I find, is often to take a look at it, understand it a bit more, so we can start creating the diagram that we have from the other side. So I'm going to put in my orders table, which I believe is the fact table, and I'm going to right click on it and say add tables that filter this table. So I'll see how the things work. And the thing that I notice here is I don't have my customers and my products in, even though they look to be connected over in Fabric. So I can actually just drag them in, and I can see there is a relationship, but it's filtering the wrong way. So the arrow goes the wrong way. It's the orders table that filters the customers and not the other way around. Well, I can just reverse that relationship. One click, it's done. The same with the products table. Quick reverse. Right click again anywhere on the pane and auto arrange it so I get it into my nice looking star schema, and I get a start of an overview of what's happening in my model. Now, as I said, when we looked at the Fabric, the semantic model in the Fabric workspace, there are no explicit measures defined, which is generally considered to be a bad practice. You should, or best practice, to define your measures. A quick way of doing this in Tabular Editor is that if you have your fact table and you have so I have here my two net order quantity and net order value, my measures, the column measures, I can, using C# scripting, very quickly generate measures on top of this. So I have here an example that I can open up. And there is a C# script here, which basically just says, for the columns that I have selected, please create me a sum measure of that column. that is the core of it. In the beginning, the first thing it does is to put on a discourage implicit measures so that the implicit measures will disappear. And it will also hide the columns so that they are not visible for the end user. I can quickly run this.
Just a quick note from my side, sorry, Morten. The discourage implicit measures. So not only is it a best practice to always discourage implicit measures and use actual explicit measures in your model instead, but there are also some features that will not work unless you discourage implicit measures. And the most notable example is calculation groups. So if you intend at some point to add a calculation group to your model, then you will eventually need to discourage implicit measures and turn all of your numeric columns into actual measures. So you might as well get it done from the start.
Indeed. Thank you, Daniel. I can run this script either by clicking button or using a shortcut, F5. So another thing of Tabular Editor, there's a lot of shortcuts. So we're going to be using a few of them throughout. I'm going to try and remember to say them out loud. But here, what I just did, instead of actually clicking it, I just pressed F5. It ran the script. And we can see that the columns have now been hit. And I've created 2 new measures that I can start using. Now, that's a pretty good start to getting it a bit organized, start creating our measures. I can also start by start looking at my different dimensions. And what I actually want to do is to start organizing my tables. So I have another script that runs here that's called create table groups. Just zoom in on, zoom in on that here. So this is what Danielle talked about. You can, in these script that I have, I can save those as macros, so I can reuse them when I go for a new model. And I don't have to bring up the script every time. I can just right-click on the object where the context is valid, where the script is valid in. So this is the model. I can go to my modeling and I can say create table group. So this is a feature inside Tabular Editor that allows you to group your tables together in, for example, dimensions and facts. So I kind of start getting a sense of what is used and how, and making the layout of my model nice and neat. And continuing on that theme, I can start looking at my columns here. There we can see they all have a little hyphen in them. So a way to get rid of this is to use the batch rename function in Tabular Editor. So I could actually just, click on select on all my columns in this customer dimension, press F2 for batch rename, find the hyphen and change it with this to a space. And I now have made all of my columns a bit more user-friendly looking, instead of using the built-in, what it looked like from the lake house that we are basing this on. Another thing that I noticed when looking at this model is that there's no date dimension. Usually we want to have date dimensions built in so we can start understanding how our orders are performing across different time periods. I could import it from my lake house and start building it again. But what I've actually have is I have another model that I built previously that contains a date dimension. Now I can easily go from one model and copy paste this whole dimension. So this is a whole dimension containing all the columns set up with the right sort orders, the right display folders, all these kind of things. I can take that from one instance of Tabular Editor, Control-C, go over into my current model and say Control-V, and it will move it over into it. Now, there was a different naming convention in that one for my dimensions with my table groups, but I have really easily just transported a whole table that is perfectly set up that I can reuse again and again from one model to another. Something that otherwise, I don't know, setting this table up would probably have taken at least the whole of this next half hour that we have left on the stream. So pretty nice that we can speed it up a bit. Now, obviously, another way to start getting my my model organized is to start adding other display folders to my folder. So I could put all these into attributes, go into my orders fact, and start making explicit display folders for my measures and all these kind of things. By multi-selecting and by doing it with one click, rather than doing it for every individual object. So I've now organized my model a bit. I have an overview of what's going on. So we're probably a good time to start writing some measures and start creating the logic of this model. A way to get started is to also trying to understand data. So what we have built in that Daniel already talked about in his presentation is we have various ways of showing the data that you have in your model inside Tabular Editor. So we have a preview data screen that allows you to bring up a preview of the whole column, of the whole table, and that takes a little bit.
Yeah, and the reason this takes a while to complete is because this is a Direct Lake model, and it's likely the first time that we are actually loading or seeing or actually executing a query against the model. So it needs to sort of start the whole reframing operation where it goes to the lake and fetches the data from the Parquet files. And yeah, the first time you do that for any given table, it might take a few extra seconds, but from then on it should be just as fast as any other import model.
So this is one way to look at the data that I have. I could also create a DAX query, basically do the same as I just did, evaluate the whole order document type table, use F5 again to run this query. And what I can see is that I have this order document type group. So my orders, so part of the business logic that I need to implement is that there are different types of orders. So there are some that are actual orders and there are some that are cancellations. And for the business users, they probably want to have those two split up into different measures. So an easy way to start doing that is to go into your measures, write a new measure using a shortcut Alt-1. I bring up a new measure. I'm going to call this measure net order quantity. And what I want to do with this measure is to only in this one show the actual orders. So in my sum of net order quantities, I show all orders, but I want to have a separate measure that only shows my orders. So I go into the expression editor and I'm going to start writing my DAX expression. We're going to start with a calculate and we're going to find the sum of net order quantity. And this is going to bring up some of all the intelligence features that Tabular Editor has. So we have what I call a context-aware intelligence. So it will only show you items that are actually relevant within the first part of the calculate statement. So things that are expressions. And we have a little yellow bar that tells us what the meaning of the calculate statement is, and that it applies a context transition to the expression that you're putting into the table. So I'm going to put in my sum of total orders. And I'm going to continue that by looking at the order document type find my group. And instead of going does not equal, then start writing cancellations, maybe making a spelling mistake because I don't know how to write cancellation, or maybe there was a spelling mistake in the data itself. I can actually go over my pivot grid and just grab that and bring it back into my DAX statement, and I have it already in the brackets that are required. Save that back to my model, and pretty quickly I have a very nice, easy measure. And that's fine. Now I'm in the measures, but I should probably also start testing it. If you were in Power BI, you would go into your visuals and put in a table and put in whatever the types you need. In Tabular Editor, one way, an easy way I find, or a good way, is to use DAX query. So I can, instead of evaluating the whole table, I will evaluate summarized columns of that order doc type group that I just had. And I'm going to find my net order quantity. Now, this is again a little tiny productivity hack feature, but I actually, when you write summarized columns and you want an expression, first you need to name the expression, and you need to tell them which measure should be called as such. So you would usually start out by writing it and saying net order quantity, and then doing a comma, and then finding my net order quantity. However, in Tabular Editor, I can just go net order quantity, and it will automatically fill in that name for me. So I don't have to worry about renaming naming my measures already. I can run this again using F5, and I can see, oh, well, there are net order quantities both for my orders and my cancellations. And I can start to consider that perhaps I should have put keep filters into my measure so that I won't see my cancellations as having a number. Now, I could go back to the expression editor and do this, but I can also, in the DAX query, right-click on the measure, go to define measure here. Zoom into, here we go. Define the measure, and this will, in my query, set up the measure that I'm able to then change independent of what it is called, what it is in the model. So I could put in my keep filters, and run the query again, check that it's correct, and then a feature that is just came out Monday that we've added to Tabular Editor 3, we've released a new version on Monday, it's called 3.12, is this little, these 4 bars up here that allow me to apply the measure that I've just defined in my DAX query back to the definition that I have in my model. So if I say apply here, so the important part is this measure is currently just defined in this query. It's not defined anywhere else. It's not defined in the actual model. No end user would ever be able to see it. But with this little button or hitting F7, I can apply the measure back to my model and save it so that the changes that I just made, that I just validated against in the summarized column statement, that this will be applied for the measure that my end user, the report builder, will use.
Yeah. So just to recap, so when we have a query scope measure, which can override any measure that's actually found in the model with a different expression, then we now have this feature that lets you easily update the model measure based on the query scoped measure. And actually, this, to be honest, this was kind of inspired by what the Power BI desktop team did with the last version, the November version, where they added the DAX query view, and they had such a feature for adding query scope measures to your DAX queries, and then providing the option of adding those measures into the model. So this is more or less the same thing. Although I would say that we kind of had this feature already, but you needed to use a different feature called a DAX script rather than a DAX query to do this in Tabular Editor. So now the advantage of the DAX script feature is that it lets you set other properties and not just the measure expression, but it also lets you apply things like format strings and whether or not the measure is hidden, which display folder it is in, the description, etc. Things that would otherwise not be valid DAX syntax, which you can then create and modify in a single script, in a single document, making it easier to get an idea of all of the semantic business logic across many different measures. So sorry, Morten, I just felt that I had to
right.
to inject that.
Yeah, for sure. To show what Daniel just talked about, if I go to my measures, I can select one or multiple, and I can right-click on them again, and I can use this script DAX function, or the script DAX object, that brings up a new page, which in a code format shows you all the attributes that has been defined. So what are my format strings, for example, down here? Which display folder do they lie in? What is the description of that measure? And you can change these in here and say this should not be in a display folder called measures. This should be in a display folder called values. If I run that again, using the bottom up on the top of my screen, there, it will change that. If you notice over on the right side, I can just go back. So if you make a mistake in Tabular Editor, you can just use Control-Z. It will just undo what you just did. So back to being in measures. And if you notice over here, when I press apply, my sum of net order value will be moved into a different display folder. So this is a very good way of having like a big overview or a detailed overview of your measures. And the good thing here is also you can save these things. You can just save a DAX script back to your local, has backup or has documentation, and you can bring it over into another model, and you could that maybe also has the same orders table, and you can run that script and it will create all the measures for you. You can do that once, and you can just bring them over like that.
Yeah,
you would save it in your GitHub repo if you want, or in your Azure DevOps repo. Source control these kind of things as well, besides the regular source control, which you should always do.
Yeah, and furthermore, DAX scripts can be used not only for measures, but also for other kinds of calculated objects in the model, such as calculated tables, calculated columns, and also calculation groups and their calculation items. So yeah, super powerful feature if you prefer to have sort of like a code-first view of your DAX logic.
Although you can't use calculated columns and tables in Direct Lake, so this would not actually be possible in this model that we're watching here.
That's a good point. Calculation groups still work though.
It does indeed. Which actually brings me on to the next part. We're just finishing up the little thing we had before in the measure net order quantity. We can see that the keep filters was reapplied back to using the DAX query, the DAX query define measure method. But speaking of calculation groups, if I want to add new objects to my model, this can also be done through C# scripting. So I have down here in the bottom my ID 22, a DAX script to create time intelligence. Now, I'm going to own it up here. My C# skills are not great. I'm trying. I'm getting better, but I wouldn't be able to just write this here out on hand and be like, well, yeah, done. What I actually did yesterday was I sat down and went like, I need to create this time intelligence calculation group, and I created it by using this. I created it in a model, and I put on the little red dot here. So it's called record script. And what that does is that it records every action you take inside Tabular Editor and puts it in a script for you. So this way, when I, the other day, created my time intelligence column, I clicked on that one, and it recorded all the things I did to create my time intelligence group. And this is the script that came out of it. I can now use that today, run that script, and it will add my time intelligence.
That's
so
so
basically,
cool. I just have to jump in from excitement. That's really awesome.
Yeah. So basically, I just had a script, and I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I did it, and Tabular Editor can now, the script can now do it for me. And again, I can just, instead of running the script and opening it every time, I could also have gone up, right-clicked, and go into my modeling part here and say create time intelligence, which brings up the macro that I saved, and it will just run that script and apply it directly.
Yeah.
Reuse.
Just a bit more context. So what Morten is showing here is basically once you have a C# script that does what you want it to do, you can save that script as a macro inside of Tabular Editor. And once a script is saved this way, it turns up within the context menu, like Morten is showing now. And you can even add it to custom toolbars in the interface. So you will always have your scripts super handy and assign custom shortcuts even. So anything you can think of that you want to automate, create a script, save it as a macro, and then you can basically extend Tabular Editor's user interface with this custom functionality of yours.
That's pretty awesome. And especially, I'm not the C# scripter at all. So this is perfect for me. Yes. I can automate my things without doing all the scripting. Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, in this day and age, I mean, you can probably also just ask OpenAI, ChatGPT, and I'm sure it's very proficient in creating Tabular Editor scripts.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, when do I have the chat in here?
Actually, it's not the first time we received that question. So while we don't have any specific plans, I mean, I definitely wouldn't rule it out for things like generating C# scripts. Because for sure, I mean, writing C# can be a bit of a barrier, especially for people who are used to working with analytics and data engineering.
Coming from a business perspective. Yeah.
But interestingly enough, C# is one of the languages that ChatGPT is actually very, very good at. In contrast with DAX, for example, where I still feel like it doesn't always work perfect. So so that could be an option for the future.
That would be
awesome.
Cool. Now, so zooming back to my demo, we have about 10 minutes left. So let's see if we can't get to it and see if there are some questions in the chat. That was one way to create a new object. So I created a time intelligence calculation cube. I can also import tables directly into my, so go to my lakehouse that I have. I can right click on my model. I can choose import tables. And it brings up a import wizard that already has the data warehouse defined. And I can, the lake house defined. I can go in and authenticate against that. And I here have my space part lake house with all my other tables in it. And I can bring in my invoice tables. I can also see a preview of them, perhaps. It takes a bit too long. There we go. And an invoice document type. And pretty quickly get those into my my model. Again, I can use the diagram view to not only see the relationship, but I can also create relationship between them. So if I have my invoice if I have my product key, for example, I can just pull that over as we used to my product key, create a relationship between them, and save that back to my model. So with Direct Lake model. It has access. It has an import wizard that will just set up your partitions as they should be for a Direct Lake model. There are some specific context around how the partitions are set up that makes it a Direct Lake model. And this is all things that Tabular Editor 3 does for you, just imports it directly into. Once you have one table with a Direct Lake model, you need them all to be, because that is how the Direct Lake works. There are no composite models or that kind of things right now. There are also a few items so what Tabular Editor does is it looks at the tabular object model. So that's why it's called a TOM Explorer, Tabular Object Model Explorer. And there are a lot of attributes in here that can be accessed. That for Direct Lakes is that, for example, there is, for example, one down here, which is called Direct Lake Behavior, which is here in the middle, which is currently set to automatic. And you can change this in Tabular Editor. So you can use Tabular Editor to set this Direct Lake behavior so that it is you are telling the Direct Lake what to do. So Direct Lake can either use the Direct Lake and be fast, or you can use the Direct Query, and Direct Query takes a bit longer. Microsoft has documentation about when it does these kind of things, but you can actually force it to set and only be in Direct Lake mode. This might mean that if it has to fall back on Direct Query and you have it in Direct Lake mode only, that your query, your visual will simply not be shown in Power BI. But it is at least a possibility, and it can be really good for testing purposes, for trying to understand what kind of items fall back into Direct Query and what kind of items don't. And trying to understand a bit more about the performance of these Direct Lake models.
Yeah, and I guess the main point here is that Tabular Editor basically exposes all of the properties and objects from the tabular object model, whereas some of these are not accessible through Power BI Desktop or through the web modeling experience in the Power BI service. And I believe right now you would have to use either Tabular Editor or maybe something like SQL Server Management Studio if you wanted to change the Direct Lake behavior property of a model.
Okay.
The final thing I just quickly want to show is that we also have this best practice analyzer. So it is also part of Tabular Editor 2 that allows you to evaluate all your object models, all your model objects, and for various best practices. Now mine is currently empty, and I just wanted to show a very quick way of bringing in a standard best practice template. So Microsoft has this on their GitHub, a best practice rules JSON that's defined with all kinds of best practices that you should keep in your semantic models. I can go to the raw here. If I click on the raw icon, it will give me the raw JSON of it, and I can copy that URL and bring it over into Tabular Editor. I click up and managing best practice rules, and I can add a new best practice rule by using include rule from URL. So this way, if I do that, I enter the raw GitHub JSON directly, and it will bring in all these best practices to my model, and I can start looking at them. So I could, for example, there is one here that's about mark as primary key, that your primary key should be marked as such. And what Tabular Editor allows you to do is not only see that they are there, it allows you to fix them. So there is a C# script that can fix this for you. You can either generate it by using the generate fix script, and it will bring up, you can see what is actually going to be done. Or if you trust it, you can say apply fix, and it will fix those issues for you directly. So really a fast way and productive way of getting all your models into shape regarding various best practices that can be applied to it.
This is also one of my favorite parts of Tabular Editor. I use it all the time, and it's a great way to make your report developers shine, right? Because you can just well, put it in here, and then you'll be the expert. You just follow this, and then you can make the best report.
Exactly. Yeah. And also I think it's important to emphasize that the best practice analyzer exists in both Tabular Editor 2 and Tabular Editor 3. And they are fully compatible in terms of the set of rules you can use between them. So I would say basically there's no excuse when you're creating a semantic model. You should always follow these guidelines. At least you should consider if these rules make sense in the context that you are building. I know that the rule set from Microsoft that Morten showed has some things which may be specific to like the American locale, like the way you format dates and stuff like that, where there are some rules about formatting them with like, what do the Americans do? They do something like month, day, year, or something like that, right? So that probably doesn't apply to everyone in the world. But aside from those, then I would say that there are a lot of rules there, like highlighting or marking the primary keys, like the one Morten just did, which are all good and which you should apply to your models as well. And since Tabular Editor 2 is free and available for everyone, then there's really no excuse. Just go ahead and scan your semantic models for best practice violations, and and just in general, make better models faster, right? As we say.
Yes, agree. You'll be the expert like that.
Exactly.
Yes.
A final little plug that I would just like to say, well, since we're also running out of time here, is that if you want to learn all these things, we have recently created a training platform. You find it on learn.tabulaeditor.com, where you can find these little base guides, and you can also see the data set that I've just been using, and you can use that to also practice yourself on on building models in Tabular Editor.
Yeah, and that's also a certification. So if you'd like to show the world that you are a Tabular Editor expert, then you can take this certification. It's completely free. You will get, is it 25 questions out of a pool of around 100 questions, and then you will have 3 hours to complete the questions. And then I believe you need to get 80% or more correct.
85, I think.
85%. To succeed, and then you will get this nice little certificate that you can show off and let people know that you're a Tabular Editor expert.
That's all awesome. Okay.
All right.
We only have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah. So I've been kind of monitoring the chat and trying to answer any questions, but unless there are any additional questions, we still have a few minutes left. If not, I guess we'll just like to say thank you very much for listening in. And once again, we look really forward to the event, in-person event in Oslo in February. It's going to be awesome. Yes, exactly. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We're super excited to have you, our fantastic sponsor. And they're going to be there. So make sure that everyone that you visit their stand, ask all the good questions and have some great discussions as well. And thank you for everyone who joined, and thank you for everyone who contributed in the chat. There's been a lot of great discussions there. So that's pretty awesome too. And we'll see you for the next live stream. Yes. All right. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Awesome.
Have
Thank
an awesome day. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.